All right, welcome to week 3. We're going to get started here. It looks like it's about 10:30. It is week 3, live lecture 1. And I just want to say good job on last week's work. I saw a lot of really strong projects for your color dresses for assignment 2. So, I mean, I was pretty much really pleased with what you guys came up with. And I'm interested in knowing how that all went for you guys in regards to if you had fun with the assignment. This is kind of an interesting process to go through masking out the dress to change the colors based on the swatches given. But good job to all of you. Like I said, I had a lot of you who did submit that were very strong and pretty much spot on. So it's great to see that you guys are paying attention to the lectures and following through the process steps. I did notice that some of you guys may have not read the instructions completely, so make sure that you're reading through the required steps. For instance, the contact sheet, and it may not be a big deal, but the instructions were actually stated to do 3 rows and 3 columns of images, and some of you guys had it maybe in 1 row or all in 1 row or different columns. So just kind of make sure you're kind of reading through that very thoroughly and following the instructions, because that's really important, especially when you get a project. If you're not following the instructions by the client, for example, that's something that might be a problem. So following instructions and submitting the correct presentation is really important. But for the most part, like I said, everybody did a great job that turned in your projects for assignment 2. And hopefully, like I said in the announcements for week 3, hopefully you guys are really getting used to and more comfortable and confident with using Photoshop selection tools and masking out your objects, and also using the selection tools to do layer adjustments and just getting the better feel of how to manipulate images. If you have any questions about week 2 or stuff that we have covered so far, just let me know, reach out to me. I'm here, I want all of you to succeed, so I'm not here just to always critique you and, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Obviously I'm going to be critiquing you in an objective way, but I'm here to help you. When you succeed, I feel like I succeed, and I want you guys to all succeed. So I'm here to help you guys. If you feel like you're stuck or having issues with learning something, let me know. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is just going over your discussion for week 3. I'll review that, and if you have any questions, let me know. Then we're going to go into just a little mask review, kind of like go into a little bit more in detail, talk about your options, and then we'll go through your assignment 3 review and demo. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Before we get into the discussions, I did want to open up Canvas here and get into your week 3 objectives. Lots of stuff going on today, this week. So your learning objectives, basically you are going to be identifying which masking technique would be appropriate for separating a given subject from its background. So there's techniques, different techniques for different reasons that you would do that, different purposes based on what the image looks like. Identify the most efficient selection tool for various photo subjects. Obviously there's different selection tools, and some are better for some purposes than others. Excuse me. Identify 3 common mistakes making selections to create masks. Discuss appropriate techniques for creating photo composites. Define the use of non-destructive editing techniques to preserve original content. Implement correct usage of Photoshop layers and clipping masks. Utilize Photoshop guides and grids to create well-balanced compositions. Identify the 4 main masking tools for creating a silhouette of a subject. And utilize quick masks to refine an alpha channel. So this week we will begin a 2-part photo compositing project. You will apply advanced masking skills and blend multiple photo elements together using adjustment layers and blending modes. All right, I'm going to play this quick video here, and then we'll go forward.
The word Photoshop is often used like, oh, you can just Photoshop that with a click of a button. And it's not true. It's really not true.
Photoshop is such an amazing tool. It changed the whole photography world.
Online culture would be a lot more boring if there weren't editing tools like Photoshop.
A lot of people feel that because you pass some work through Photoshop with digital, the process is not as valid that it's going to be with a click of a button, which is a big misconception. I feel like I do draw traditionally, but I just do it on the computer. Photoshop, there's nothing you can't create with it, especially nowadays. It's just like learning any program. I feel it's definitely important to experiment for yourself. Just go crazy with it. I think a lot of my work is fantasy, but photorealistic. It's that floating world image, and people seem to be drawn to that. Usually a production company or advertising company would approach me, and they would give me 1 or 2 images to work with as a start. With the Paul McCartney one, it was just him on stage in a black background. So I would have to take him and make an interesting illustration with it. I'd say typically 50 layers is normal, if not more. I'd say that would be the base. It's not just layers of random elements. You gotta have color balancing, and then you have to adjust levels, because everything and anything could be a layer. 10, 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't be able to create images like what I do today. I've talked to traditional artists before, and a lot of them are just kind of stubborn in trying it, or they feel like there'll be a cop-out if they do, and I don't agree with that. It's really no different than a regular traditional brush. It's just how you want to use it.
Before the digital age, we used to retouch prints, necks, hexachromes. Everything was made with hands. Now everything can be photoshopped. So editors, they put a lot of work on the post-production. The first thing is start with a basic shaping. Make sure the body, face, the hair, the finger, the hands, the feet looks pretty good to the eye. Then I work my way in to do some details in the skin, blotches, zits, bags, and wrinkles, red eyes, crossing fine hairs. I mean, I can go on and on. A good retouching job, obviously, is when you don't see it's retouched. There's still some quality into it, some luminosity, some shadow, it's still alive. But this is a site called Photoshop disaster. People are just retouching without the eye of the retoucher or the eye of the photographer. There's poor quality. You don't have any structure left. We're really bombarded with pictures of glamour and perfectness. It seems like perfection has to be the norm. And it's very sad. I do believe those images impact our definition of beauty. But the trend changes and the beauty keeps changing over time. There's a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, which I believe is true. I think we can separate between like the commercial beauty and the artistic beauty.
Photoshop has evolved along with remix culture in a very interesting way. It's become a dominant way to be able to illustrate their sense of humor or what they find is funny, what their ethics are. And images are much easier to spread than a blog post. Sometimes Photoshop memes can be a very simple way of communicating, but other times I think they can be quite deep and complicated. Casually Pepper Spray Cop, for example, was a meme that originated from this photograph of a police officer who was pepper spraying some Occupy protesters on campus. And a lot of people use this meme to make a statement about police brutality or to publicly humiliate Lieutenant John Pike. There's a really recent Photoshop meme called Thumbs and Ammo, in which movie stills having an actor holding a gun has the gun replaced with a thumbs up hand signal. And this one actually requires some very significant Photoshop abilities. And some people have said that it's an interesting way to make a statement about gun control or have an anti-gun sentiment. I'd say Photoshop has been empowering for people. It gives them the ability to humble celebrities like Beyonce's unflattering photos or politicians. And previously, people didn't really have such a way to get their voice heard in these regards. So these tools have really helped users to be able to interact with media and change it into whatever way they want.
The benefit is obviously the practicalness. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's better and better all the time.
Photoshop has become very important in terms of our visual culture, and meme culture is becoming increasingly important in online discourse.
10, 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't be able to create images like what I do today. It's not possible.
All right. So pretty interesting to see that how much, Photoshop not only has changed and what you can do with it, but also how our culture has changed within technology and how, we're kind of being influenced too in that regard. So, designers really have to keep up with the trends of what's going on, not just in the world, but also kind of in technology related trends so that we can kind of advance ourselves with the techniques in Photoshop and other programs to follow those trends. But very, very interesting for sure. Some of those memes are kind of funny to look at. All right, as we go forward, don't forget, excuse me, your course media area for week 3. I just like to always kind of check in with you guys with this because there's some really great information in here, supplemental material that you can use to your advantage, and it's very beneficial because if you're stuck somewhere, you need extra information, go into your, obviously you have required readings in here anyway, so go in here and take a look. Here for week 3, you have a video tutorial on how to remove a person from the background with masking. So you can take a look at that, and know how long that video is. Let's look at this. We can play this, but it's not super long here.
Now that we know a little bit about how masking works.
Okay, so yeah, it's only about 6 minutes long. Let me play this since it's required anyway, and then we'll go forward with the discussion here.
Let's take a look at a real world scenario where we need a bit more precision when it comes to working with a mask. And what I want to do with this portrait is I want to first select the subject. We'll do that using the quick select tool. Then I want to create a mask. And I want to refine the edges of the mask using our masking panel controls. And also, we'll look at how we can paint onto the mask using our brush tool. Well, let's start off using the quick select tool. You'll find that in the tools panel. Now with this tool, sometimes what you'll want to do is position your cursor over your image and change the brush size. You can do that by pressing the right bracket key to create a larger brush. Sometimes it's helpful to have a large brush and to go over your image quickly, and then next to go back with a smaller brush and to really work on the edges. So here I'm just going over the photograph with a really big brush in order to work quickly, yet that doesn't allow me to select everything that I need to select. So next what I'll do is decrease the brush size. You can do so by pressing the left bracket key. Then here with the smaller brush, I'll make sure that I'm selecting the hair. Also want to make sure I'm selecting the subject all the way to the edge there, and the hand. That's good. This side of the photograph needs some help too. So I'll just patiently paint over these areas in order to make all these selections. If there's an area that you need to deselect, well, you can always do so by holding on the Option key on a Mac, Alt on Windows. And in this case, I'm going to press Option and click and paint over the train tracks here. I don't need those as part of the selection. All right, well, great. Well, with this image, it's going to be a little bit tricky, right? Let's zoom in just a bit. The reason it's going to be tricky is because we have all of this hair. Our edge isn't very defined there, so we'll need to fix that up. Let's take a look at how we can do that. Rather than using Refine Edge here, what we're going to do is simply click to add or create a layer mask. Now that we have this layer mask, we can see that Quick Select did a decent job. We want to make this even better. To do that, double click on the mask itself. Next, you'll notice that you have an option to refine the mask edge. This is identical to refining the selection edge, which you can choose up here, except the advantage of doing this on a mask is that you can always modify it later. So here we'll click on Mask Edge to open up the dialog. We already know how this dialog works. Here I'll view this on transparency. Next, typically it's helpful to turn on Smart Radius and to crank up your radius a little bit there. That makes those edges much better. Then we may need to increase these sliders a bit. Now because there's hair involved, smooth and feather will want to keep pretty low. Contrast will help us to define the edge a bit more. And then sometimes you may need to shift the edge just a touch in order to bring that in. Another thing that you can do is you can use this tool here. It's called the Refine Radius tool. If you click and paint over areas, it can help Photoshop to pay attention to those and to refine the edge selection in those areas. Here, when we click on our preview checkbox, we can see the before and then now the after. The edges look much better. In order to apply the refinements to the mask, simply click OK. So here what this has done is it's made our mask even better. And the great thing about working with a mask is that we can always adjust this. In other words, here you can see I've clicked into the mask. I can grab my brush tool. And with the brush tool, I can decide, you know what, I really want to get rid of a few of those little hairs that are flying out on the edges there. Or maybe I'll notice that I've made a mistake. Here, I can paint with white in order to bring in a little bit more detail on the shoulder. I noticed that my selection wasn't very good right there. In this way, we can fine-tune this mask so that we can achieve really good results. Speaking of that, I noticed that there's an area of the hair right here which isn't very good. So I'll use this brush, and I'll paint with black this time to conceal that. I just want to conceal this little portion of the photograph back here. Again, in this way, we have this little bit of extra control. We can remove portions of the image or bring more in, and this gives us extra flexibility. The other thing that's great about working with the mask is that you can always temporarily disable the mask. In other words, let's say that you've decided, you know what, I actually want to have the subject in this environment. Well, you can undo the mask, so to speak, by temporarily disabling it. Let me show you two shortcuts that you can use in order to do that. The first involves right-clicking or control-clicking on the mask. The top menu item allows you to choose Disable Layer Mask. Right-click or control-click again, and you can bring that back. Now, that is something that you can't do with selections. Once you've selected the background and deleted it, you can't bring it back. With a mask, you can. Another way to do the same thing is to hold down the Shift key and then to click on the mask. And here you can see I can turn that mask on and off by simply shift-clicking on the mask icon in the Layers panel. All right, well, to reiterate a few things that we learned here, we started off using the Quick Select tool. We created a selection over the image. Next, with that selection active, we clicked on the Add Layer Mask icon to create a mask based on our selection. Then, we double-clicked the mask to open up our Properties panel and to control our settings for our mask. In particular, we looked at how we could refine the mask edge by clicking on this button here. And then, last but not least, we explored how we can work on our mask further by targeting the mask and then by painting with our brush tool and painting with black or white to either reveal or conceal portions of the mask. And then as a little bit of a bonus, I highlighted a shortcut which you can use in order to enable or disable the mask. And I think the best shortcut is to hold down the Shift key and then to click on the mask icon so that you can then change your view or enable or disable the mask.
All right.
Now that we know a little.
So that definitely was very quick little video to watch to help you guys understand like how you can refine your mask. Excuse me. There are also lynda.com videos I'm not going to be playing, but I just want to kind of point this out. So if you're having some issues understanding masking, there are other supportive videos here to help you out as well. So every week, obviously you want to go in there and check it out. All right, let's go into your week 3 discussions. Sorry about that, I had to clear my throat. So we're going to be talking about the photo composite. And let me read through this really quickly here. So photo composites are used for a variety of different purposes: movie posters, book covers, editorial illustrations, advertisement, and fine art. A few years ago, Annie Leibovitz did a phenomenal ad campaign for Disney featuring fantasy photo composites. You can see some of them here. So if you click on this, you can see some of those. Take a look at those here. I can get this out of here. Here's Jennifer Hudson's Princess Tiana. Kind of frozen here. Hold on 1 second. See if I can get this bigger here. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Disney Dreams by Annie Leibovitz. This is kind of an interesting way of photographing, compositing. Oops, pop-ups here. Gotta love those pop-ups, right? Tangled. Let's get that. Disney Dreams. So these are all photo composites created for Disney movies. So it's kind of neat to see each of these here, for sure. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's about 70 of them, but definitely check them out. It's kind of neat. Photo composites are more than just taking one photo, cutting it out, and sticking it on another photo. Different tools such as blending modes, adjustment layers, clipping masks, and clone stamping are all utilized in order to make the lighting, color, and texture all blend together. As designers, it is essential that we master these tools and master the art of photo compositing so we can create effective projects for our clients. The process. You've already learned a number of techniques for compositing images in the past few weeks of this course, as well as your DES104 course. It's important to remember, however, that the first step is starting with large, high-res quality images, at least 4 megapixels or larger for print. Next, ensure that you choose the appropriate selection technique prior to making your mask. Finally, apply blending modes and adjustment layers as needed to make the separate images appear like they belong together. The results. Mastering the art of photo compositing can have a number of benefits for a graphic designer. Selling pre-made book covers, desktop wallpapers, art products, and other digital content created using photo compositing can be a great source of passive income. Additionally, a portfolio that features compelling photo composites can make a designer very appealing to potential clients and employers. So for your discussion prompt, find an effective fantasy-themed photo composite, share it with the class, and discuss why you believe it is effective by answering questions below. Did the artist make the transitions believable, and why? What makes the shadowing effective? What masking tools do you think were used? What blending modes and or adjustment layers do you think were used? And what makes the composition effective? And then for your citation, you might use articles that show examples of good compositing or bad compositing. You can also find articles from experts that suggest techniques for effective compositing. You know, your initial and reply posts should work to develop a group understanding of this topic, challenge each other, build on each other, and always be respectful, but discuss this and figure it out together. And don't forget to that your reply posts are and your initial posts are hitting upon the requirements below. And I noticed some of you may not be putting in citations, so make sure you're doing that. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion. I think that one way, let me see here if I can share this without having to log in here. One of the sources you can go to, and I'm sure most of you know this source by now, Pinterest. Pinterest is a wonderful website to gather inspirational imagery. Whoops. Mood boards, not just, you know, for personal reasons, but also for design reasons. So let me open up Pinterest here 1 second. So and this is one place that you can start for this discussion. I open up Pinterest and then just added a keywords photo compositing ad, and let's see what comes up here. Looks like some really interesting ads are coming up. Here's one here, Land Rover, interesting one. So you can go through here and actually look through some of the ads that you might want to talk about. There's one here. I don't know if this is an ad, but looks like it's taking me to an actual website here, so I won't click on that. But you know, you can find some really, really cool advertisements in here. So you might want to check this source out for this discussion. You might even find bad examples to talk about. You know, once you place in good examples, you might find examples that do a bad job in conveying a composite, and maybe not quite work as it should have. So you might want to show that as a comparison. All right, so hopefully, I know some of you guys already got started on this since we are, you know, it's even Monday, which is great to see you guys starting so early. But yeah, definitely get that started. The initial post will be due before midnight on Wednesday. So go ahead and get that started for this week. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit of a mask review here. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll go into the different masking techniques, and then we will eventually get into your assignment 3 review and demo as well. So I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break here, grab a drink and coffee, and come back. We'll go over that information. Okay, see you in 5 minutes. Okay, looks like 5 minutes is up, and just goes so quick. But I have some coffee in my system and we're ready to go. All right, so we talked about masks, and the last couple weeks we've talked about masks, and they're probably one of the most single important things in Photoshop that that you have in Photoshop for your process here. So think about, you know, a mask in the simplest definition is a way to apply something to a very specific portion of an image. You know, some of you guys are a little confused on what a mask is. And there are two primary types of masks, and we talked about them both, and hopefully you've played around with both of them. There's clipping masks and layer masks. So these two tools are closely related in concept, but very different in application. So we're going to start by talking about layer masks again, and we'll just show the differences between each of them and discuss, you know, what they are. Okay. So when we talk about masks, oops, this one was supposed to say layer mask. I don't know why there we go. The layer mask is something that you apply to a given layer to control the transparency of that layer. So where layer opacity controls the transparency of the entire layer at once, a mask gives you more precise controls over very specific areas. Okay, so if you want the entire layer to be at 30% opacity, and you would, 30%, you would lower the opacity. If you want just the left side of the layer to be at 30%, you would use a mask. So when you add a mask to a layer, it covers the entire thing with an invisible grayscale canvas. There are ways to see it that we'll check out pretty much later, but just know that this is a general rule. Applying a mask to a layer won't cause any immediate visual differences unless you have an active selection at the time. So on this invisible canvas, you know, you can paint white, black, or any level of gray in between. The color that you paint tells Photoshop how opaque to make the pixels at that point. So white means 100% opacity and black means 0% opacity. Okay. So let's take a look at that. Let's open up Photoshop here. And like I said, this is kind of like a review, but it's always good to know the differences between a layer mask and a clipping mask. Okay, let's see, open up this house here. And I'm gonna stop sharing so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm gonna open up this fire image as well. Okay, so we're gonna do a select all, copy, and we're just gonna paste it over top of this layer. So we have two layers here. So when you put a layer mask on the fire layer on top of the house, and you start creating the mask, you know, start painting over it depending on what your fill is set to. And then adjust your opacity based on what you want shown through here. You can really start creating a really neat effect using the mask. So it's kind of showing through, and this is a layer mask effect here. Let me dial down the opacity a little bit. Oops. On the brush. I'm just dialing the opacity down on the brush a little bit so we can kind of get some stuff showing through here. And then, you know, obviously after you can see kind of the blend going in, or I'm sorry, the mask taking an effect of the layer mask. And now you can kind of play around with the other options in here, the blending mode options, just to kind of make it blend the way that you want to, if you kind of play around with those options. Oops. So you can kind of do some really cool effects. Now, a clipping mask is a little different. So clipping masks are very similar to layer masks, only they use one layer to determine the transparency of another. So you'll, in this demo here, I will be stacking 2 layers on top of each other, with the bottom being the determining factor of the transparency of the top. So instead of using black and white values, clipping masks simply borrow transparency from the layers used to make them, namely the bottom layer. So if the bottom layer has some areas that are opaque and some areas that are transparent, a clipping mask will apply these values to the top layer. So this one's a little hard to explain without actually seeing it. So let's use the 2 layers to cut out, for this example here. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. All right, so let me get rid of this layer mask example. I'm going to do file open, and I'll just open up the fire again for this example. I'm going to unlock this layer. All right. Okay, so in order to achieve a clipping mask effect, we simply want to swap the positions of the layer. So let me first take my type tool, and I'm going to type fire, the word fire here, make it really big. And I'm going to make it kind of thicker font right there. Okay. So what you want to do is you want the fire layer, the actual image of the fire on top. Oops, so we're going to swap these here. Okay. So you just simply swap the position of the layer so that the fire is on top, and then go to the layers menu at the top of your screen and select create clipping mask. Boom, right there. Voila, you have the effect that pretty much you were going for. So where the text layer was opaque, the fire layer is now opaque, and where the text layer was transparent, the fire layer is now transparent. So there's some really interesting functionality going on here. You can still position, you can still position and make changes to each of the 2 layers independently by dragging around the wood layer, or I'm sorry, the fire layer. So you can kind of play around with that. Also, you can apply layer effect to the compilation. If you wanted to, do something to this fire layer, you could do so. So you just go up to layer. Let's see here, layer style. Once you select the actual word, and let's say we want to do like a drop shadow. So we can actually add a drop shadow to this. I don't know if you guys can see this layer style here, but you can do a drop shadow to it. You can kind of, or whatever is available in those presets. So clipping masks can be fun. So just kind of wanted to make sure you guys know the differences between the 2, and kind of understand it so that you're kind of making the right effect for certain instances. And I think this type effect is kind of cool too, because I think it's very visually interesting for sure, especially for specific things in advertisements like headlines or something that you're trying to create to look a little different. All right, there's also channel masking, and channel masking, it's a little bit more of an advanced masking technique. And it's really good for, if you have a complex image, like for instance, this kitty cat here, it's an image, but you can see that it's silhouetted out here, but it has lots of like very intricate fur going on. So they could be very difficult to mask because the subject is very intricate as far as the fur goes, maybe hair in a subject. So all of that fine hair detail means making an accurate selection will be time consuming for the most part. So the magic wand or even a pen tool are of no use, for this particular purpose. So let's take a look at how you can change your channels to, maybe make this selection a little bit easier and more precise. I'm going to open up another image here. Let me close out of here. Oops. Open. I think I have a kitty cat right here. Kitty cat. So the first step in a project like this is to jump over to the channels mask. So if you don't have that, go up to Window and choose Channels, the channel palette. We want the channel with the darkest cat and the brightest background, which turns out to be, let's see here. So what we want to do is we want to hide, one or the other just to see which one's the darkest. We'll hide everything but blue, hide everything but green, hide everything but red, and it looks like blue is the darkest, more contrasted channel. So make a copy of this blue channel. Select the blue channel, hide all the rest. We're going to make a copy. Just drag it down here. We're going to make a copy to the create a new channel, and it says blue copy. Okay. You can also hit the Command L to bring up the levels, adjustment levels after you did this. So Command L, and you have your levels adjustments going on here. So you want to darken the shadows and the midtones so there is a crazy amount of contrast, like in the image that you'll see here once I slide this over. Be careful not to go too far with this adjustment. You want to zoom in and watch the hair detail on the fringe of the fur to make sure you're not clipping too much. It doesn't have to be perfectly black and white at this point. Some dark grays are acceptable. So we're going to go from this left stop here, and we're going to go all the way to the right. So maybe about there is probably good. At this point, you encounter one of the trickiest steps of the entire process. So the goal is to get as much of the cat as closest to black as you can. This is easy for the face portions and other random spots near the center. Just grab a black brush and fill it in. So what we'll do is we'll get it as close as we can. And then what we can do here is grab a brush and kind of turn up the opacity here. And I'm still on the channel layer. We'll just go in and kind of take care of the rest. Now, we won't do the edges though. We'll just kind of do the in-between stuff here. We'll kind of keep the fur edges alone because we're going to do another step here. It's going to help with that. I'm just using the black brush for the details that may have not been grabbed throughout what I just did here. Making the brush smaller, zooming in. It's always good to do. Like I said, I'm not going to go to the edge. I'm just going to get closest to the edge without doing the edge. Oops. Undo. Okay, I'll leave everything else kind of as is here. Okay. All right. But what about the edge of the hair? Okay. And we can swap this too if we don't want this edge added in here. Of course, it's going to be a little whiter, but kind of, I think because this image wasn't completely white, that's why you have this gray-ish area here. Oops. Oops. So me brush this over here real quick. Kind of not paying attention to the edges here of where the cat fur is. Kind of leaving that go. It's taking care of what's actually not going to be in the selection. Okay. So it turns out one of the best ways to handle this task as far as the fur is concerned is to use a couple of unlikely candidates. So the dodge and burn tools. We haven't really talked about that. So the reason these work so well is that they can accurately target certain ranges of gray extremely accurately. So you can set the dodge tool to target the highlights and the burn tool to target the shadows. So you can find that right here. This is the burn tool and this is the dodge tool. So you can find it right in your tool area, toolbox here. Grab a medium-sized soft brush and you can make your way to around the edges of the image, burning shadows and dodging highlights. So you can go up here after choosing that and then do your shadows. Zoom in here. And you can actually go in and burn on the edges here. You can really get pretty accurate fur coming over the edges. And I'm just kind of selecting over the edges here with my brush. So this might sound like a time-intensive task, and it can be some for certain images, but in truth, the dodge and burn tools feels like magic when you're using them and takes much of the work out. So that is one way to grab all the fur edges. In there. So once you're done, you can hit the Command-Shift-I to inverse the channel so that the cat is white and the background is black, like it, you know, here. It's Command-Shift-I. Command-Shift-I. Oh, I wonder if I have to do the background here. Okay, this actually isn't inverting here. Okay, so instead of doing Command-Shift-I, just choose the RGB, just select RGB on your layer, and then choose Command and click on the blue layer. That's going to shift and select your actual image here. Okay. So now that we have a channel that accurately represents what we want from a mask, how do we convert it? There are ways to do this, but the easiest is to Command click on the channel to load a selection. So with a selection loaded, return to your cat layer and click the New Mask button. So what you're going to do is you're going to go, oh, sorry, New Mask. But before we do that, actually, let me undo this. We have to invert this. So we have to go up to select inverse and then do a new layer mask. There we go. Now you can go in here and actually clean it up, like on the left side here. For instance, the shadow work was going on with, oops, with the intensity of the shadow. So we can actually go in here and clean this up. Okay, there we go. You can double click on the actual mask, and like in that video that you just saw, you can actually, you know, feather the mask a little bit more if you kind of want to play around with that. Oops, what am I doing here? So, you know, there's other things that you can do to kind of refine this. Select and mask. Select and mask. This actual preset was shown in the video to help smooth out certain areas. You can show original, and then we can go on layers, so we can actually see it when we're applying it. So again, you can kind of play around with, you know, certain things in here that we talked about before. Edge detection, turn that up a little bit. Feathering. And then when you want to see it, click on the preview and click OK. When you're actually ready to see what this looks like too, you can add, let me see where my channels or my layers, add a layer below this and just fill it with black. Oh, and it looks like we got some layers here that need to be taken care of, but for the most part around here, I'm not sure why this is all so pixelated. Shouldn't be. I'm thinking because the image was like a low quality image, and that's probably why. Let me see here, image size. Oh no, it's just through, what's a smaller image? Why is my brush so weird here? Hold on. I'm not sure why it's so pixelated. It's almost like I have a color mode on here. Oh, I do. That's why. Okay. Oops. I had the dissolve blend mode on there. But you can see, and this is kind of a hard image to really look at because it's a low res image. So it's blending into this area here. Oops. But you can kind of see that it's, oops, starting to look a little bit better here. Okay. All right. So it's kind of another way to deal with the edges of an image. All right. As we go forward here, let me go back to my slides. Excuse me. right, let's go into your assignment. We'll check that out, and then we'll go through the demo here as much as we can. Get rid of this image and open up our canvas here. Hold on one second. Got everything kind of in the way here. Okay, so assignment 3, like it said, it's a continuation. So we will be working on this going forward here. This is kind of an interesting project. It's the Centaur project, part 1. So there is a part 2, and we'll kind of take a look at that in a second here. Let me read over this, and then we'll kind of get started on how to approach this project. Okay, so let me zoom in so you can kind of see a little bit. Photo compositing is a process of combining 2 or more photographs together to create an original scene, composition, or idea. Sometimes internet users use photo compositing to create hoaxes like this. Let's click on that, see what's going on here. Oh, the link's not working. Figures, right? We kind of saw some things in that video, though, in the beginning of class. So those are kind of the memes that you saw are kind of what those are showing. But for designers, photo compositing is a skill that can garner a good income. So the process, let's look at the 4 main masking tools for separating a subject from its background and creating a silhouette of that subject. So you have layer mask. We just talked about this. A layer mask can be created by first using a selection tool, such as the lasso tool, quick mask tool, marquee tool, or pen tool, and then creating a silhouette of that subject using the apply layer mask option. Clipping mask. The clipping mask uses the silhouette shape on a base layer in order to clip the top layer into the shape of the base layer. Alpha channel. Photoshop separates the colors of an image into separate channels. You can use these channels to create masks. Refine edge. The refine edge tool found in the drop menus at the top of the screen, or by double clicking on your layer mask, allows you to adjust the edge of the selection to make it more accurate. In addition to creating a silhouette of your subject, you will want to ensure that your overall composition is well balanced and appealing. Use guides and grids while laying out your photo elements is a great way to ensure that your elements are not too close to the document's margins and that your overall composition has a structure to it. The grid. Photoshop offers a grid to help designers lay out their composition. The shortcut keys to show the grid are Command, Control, Apostrophe. The grid settings can be changed at the top of the screen in Photoshop Preferences. For instance, if you wanted the grid to show the exact center of the document, you would change the grid spacing to 50%. The guides are lines that you put on your document and place wherever you like. The shortcut key to show the guides is Command, Control, semicolon. In order to make a guide, make sure the rollers are showing, Command, Control, R. Then click on the roller and drag the guide line into place. This is especially helpful if you want to ensure certain elements line up. It's kind of similar in the other programs like InDesign. So the result, many of the photo compositors work in film advertisements. A number of movie posters can be found here. Notice how many feature photo compositing. Let's see if this link works. There we go. You can kind of check out some of those movies. Movie covers here, posters. Okay. Imagine being able to dream up worlds and create them on the page. Photo compositing can allow you to do that. Here are some more examples. And we saw some in the video, like I said, in the beginning of class too. Kind of interesting. Mountain iced coffee. So some interesting, there's more too, but I'll let you guys take a look at that. Whoops. But yeah, I mean, just looking at examples gets you kind of inspired to know kind of what you're going to be doing for this project too. All right, so the prompt is, for this assignment, you'll be creating your own centaur. You can find out more about centaurs here. It's like Greek mythology against a fantasy backdrop. Be sure to take advantage of the course resources to learn about how to composite images together and then collect the appropriate images to create your project. All right, assignment instructions. A publisher found your portfolio online and wants to hire you to design the cover for an upcoming young adult fantasy novel about a centaur main character. You'll be creating a paperback cover, so 6 inches by 9 inches. The final output would be a CMYK PDF, 300 DPI in size, but you will email your client an RGB JPEG at 72 dots per inch so that he or she can download it quickly and view it easily on their smartphone. Use a combination of at least 3 of the provided images, creating a rough draft of the cover artwork. The background should be in place. The horse and the human should be perfectly masked and perfectly blended together, but you don't need to have the coloring, lighting, and texture in place just yet. So this is just getting the positioning of everything in place, you know, masking some stuff out, but not necessarily setting the mood yet. So you can go through here and actually download all of these and then decide kind of which direction that you want to go. You can select one background image out of the 4. Select one horse image out of the 4. I think this one is not downloading though for me, the horse 2. Select one human image out of the 4 or 6. And then when you go down after you do that, step number 4, you can download the masthead template here. And that's a PSD file. You're going to make a 6 inch by 9 inch Photoshop document, 300 dots per inch in RGB mode. You're going to place your masthead, background, horse, and human images into the document and arrange them appropriately using the appropriate selection technique. Separate the subject from its background using layer masks. Ensure that your masks are clean and the selections are accurate. You're going to save your document as such and then download your document to 72 dots per inch and save as a JPEG. Submit the JPEG file, but be prepared to show the PSD file if requested. So you're going to basically save the the PSD on your computer as 300 dots per inch file format, the native file, but then you're going to export it out as a JPEG when you're finished for submission. And this is an example of what the week 4, not week 3, but week 4, kind of how this will all come together. So yours probably won't look like that after week 3, after this week, but eventually in week 4, we'll be kind of honing in on getting everything looking like it's part of the entire world, I guess you could say, like setting the mood, adjustment layers, and all of that good stuff. Okay. So I downloaded most of these. I think I was able to download the horse too. I just had to save it as a JPEG in order for me to actually open it up in Photoshop. So I had to rename it like horse.jpg for it to open. So if you're having that issue, that might be something that you want to do. All right, so taking a look at that, let me go into Photoshop here and let me create my final canvas. I'm going to go File, New. And in my option panel here, I'm going to choose inches. And I'm going to do 6 inches wide by 9 inches tall, 300 dots per inch, RGB color. We'll do transparent. Click OK. Now, I'm going to save this before I do anything else. DES323, assignment 3. First and last name. All right. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of look through all those options. The images that were given to you guys, I would kind of look through that, see what you think would blend well together. Some of them might not, based on, you know, the orientation. So it's really important to, I'm going to try to open up some of these here without opening up in Photoshop. Give me 1 second. So it's really important to kind of pick and choose the appropriate, say, angles of images that you're trying to do composite together. Like certain images may not work in certain ways and perspectives that you have the image kind of in orientation wise. So let's take a look at these images in a larger fashion, larger view here. All right, so the horses, you have this horse, you know, obviously this is a front perspective. So you would want a frontal, you know, kind of from the front shot picture of a person if you're using that horse. If you're using this horse, you'd want one that's obviously looking to the left and angled in that way. Same thing here, just kind of knowing what direction and what angle that you're kind of using for your the half body. So I think that's one of the trickiest parts. Here's the bodies that you have to choose from. So for instance, that one would probably would work best on this one if flipped so that she's looking left, or vice versa. You have the men here that you can cut out and use as well in different angles, and women. The other images, which are kind of out of order here, would be the background image that you're going to use for the background. You're going to pick and choose which one you want to do. You may start working on one, you know, body, and it may not work on a certain particular horse in the direction and perspective it's taken in, and you might want to try another one. So it's all in kind of experimenting and seeing what works for that particular horse. So that's important. Okay. So I picked the horse and I picked the person, but I didn't pick the background yet in starting this. So let me grab, which horse did I want to do here? I think it was this one. And then the body, I was going to do this body. But I didn't pick out a background yet. So that's the body, and that's the horse that I have to cut out. And then I have to pick a background. So I'm thinking maybe this background might be kind of cool to put in there. So I'm going to do select all. I'm going to copy this background first, and then I'm going to place that into my actual final layer here. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, see how big this is. Yeah, it's pretty big. Hold the shift key down after I place it in here and get it so that it's not completely too huge. Okay. So kind of use that as my background. Now you can open up that masthead at that time too. That's provided to you guys. This is the layer 4 that you'll need to convert over. I'm going to do a select all, and then oh, not that one. Go back to my original layer and do a paste. And then what we'll do is we'll just hide this, because we'll put cover type art, and we're just going to hide this for now, because we need to work on everything else before that. All right, so now I have my 2 images that I know I want to put together, composite, but I need to clip them out of their backgrounds. So I'm going to go back to, let me actually do the horse first. And I unlock their layers. And now I'm just going to take the quick selection tool and I'm going to select this horse as best as I can. Okay, we kind of selected certain things that I didn't want to select. So you can always do a quick mask here, or a quick selection, quick mask mode. Take your brush and get the details. So you're just selecting the parts here. And I can do kind of the methods and techniques I showed you before. I'm getting this a little bit better. Now you can use other tools too, if this, calls for the pen tool to get more accurate selections. I'm kind of leave a little bit of the grass in here on the feet so it doesn't look so weird that, his hooves aren't showing here. Hooves. So maybe the grass will come in. Clean that up a little bit. Just making your brush size smaller if you're using that technique for selecting, smaller and bigger in certain areas. And then going back and actually cleaning things up. Zooming in, cleaning things up that need to be cleaned up. Flipping the fill, the stroke. So I'm just kind of grabbing some of the surrounding grass here. I think that would be good to do to make it look a little bit more realistic. Flipping my colors if needed. Foreground, background to make certain selections, like I said. Oops. So this is all not very new stuff to you guys. It's just kind of refining what needs to be selected. Working with the tools. Oops. Can be very tedious, but turn on some music, have fun with it. Get in the zone. All right, that's pretty good. Cleaning it up. Always forget which way I'm going here on my mask. Okay. Looks pretty good. There's a couple things that I need to clean up here. Okay. All right, so I have my mask. Well, I don't have my mask yet, but I will have it. So I have my selection, and now I have my mask. All right. Once that is done, now I need to go and do the selecting of this horse, dragging it into my world here. So as you can see, as I drag and drop it, it's bringing in my mask as well. Now, obviously, it looks pretty out of place. It looks like it's just placed in there, and that's not what we wanted initially, but for this part of the process, that's what we're going to be doing. So let's just leave it at that and go back to our model here. Unlock the layer. And what we're going to do is the same thing here, or you can use your other, techniques, selection techniques. I'm just going to do this with the quick selection tool here. I think this will work really well with the background that we have. And zooming in on it and making the brush size a little smaller will help select more specific areas here. Oops. I want to do the negative if I want to take out the background. So I'm actually selecting the background now. So I want to choose the negative minus tool here. All right. So now that he's selected, again, we're going to do a mask. And you can go in here and start, playing around with the refinement of the mask if you need to. And I should have done that on the other one, and I actually forgot. So I'll do that in a second here. I'm going to go up about 3 pixels or 2 pixels here. Oops. There we go. Let me go back to that horse. Not this one. The friendly horse. And let me go back to layers, double click on my layer to refine it. Let me zoom in here. And if you uncheck the show original, you'll see kind of the changes happening here. You'll see kind of the feathered, see how it kind of changes. So we can kind of make it a little bit more feather, click OK, zoom out. And what we're going to do is we're going to take him again, go back into my here. I'm going to delete this guy. I'm going to replace this guy into that document just so he's a little bit more masked out here. Drag and drop. There he is. Then I'm going to go back to my guy friend here. I'm going to put him into, not that, get rid of this guy. I'm going to save this as horse PSD, so if I need to change it, I can go back to that. Drag him into this document. I'm going to make him smaller, so edit, scale, hold down the shift key so you're not distorting him in any way. And what I would do is get him to the, kind of a right size where he doesn't look too small nor too big. And you can kind of adjust this once you kind of get started a little bit more. Nick right around here is probably pretty good. So he's going to be kind of coming out of this body, the image of the horse. So we're kind of getting him in position. Now you can make it opaque so you can see through him if you want to kind of position him, you think, in the best way possible. Go up to edit, transform if you need to rotate him just a little bit so it's a little bit more realistic in this image here. Do rotate. All right, so you're kind of getting him placed in here. It may not be the exact size that you're going to have this finally. Obviously, the color needs to be changed, but we're just going through getting him in position, so that we can blend him into this horse. And I would say kind of his midsection would go right where the midsection of the horse is here. And then what I would do is just put another layer mask onto this layer. Take your brush tool, oops, and we're just going to, oops, sorry, delete that here. Oops, we actually have to copy this selection, so hold on 1 second. All right, so we're going to select that layer mask again with your paint brush. And now we can actually go in and start making more. I would probably take your opacity down a little bit when you're doing this. You just have to make sure you're going over it again and again. Let me pull it up a little bit to 70. But what we're doing, we're just kind of masking out what we don't want to see. So obviously we don't want to see his shorts here. And that line. Okay. There you go. Probably make them a little bit smaller. Now seeing this, going to zoom out just a tiny bit smaller here. Pull down the shift key. Okay. So while that's in place, that's all looks fine and good. But the face, obviously, of the horse needs to kind of go. So we're going to click on the actual horse face. And this is kind of a trick that you can play around with. It's called the patch tool. And the patch tool is really cool because you can actually, once that horse image is selected, you can actually do a little selection of what you don't want to show. So I'm going to select around the head and make a selection. And then I'm going to, once I make that selection, I'm going to pull this to the left or to the right to kind of make, I'm going to pull it up here, make it look like it's part of the body here. So I'm going to pull down and then let go, and you can see it kind of patching in there. All right. So now all you need to do, and again, this is paying attention to the details as we go further. You don't have to do this quite yet. You can take your magic clone stamp tool, and selecting your image of the horse again, holding down the Alt Option key, we can kind of make it look like it's a little bit more blended in there. So I'm clicking and sampling that texture that we got going on and just kind of clicking Alt Option to grab that selection, make it blend in a little bit better here. So it makes it look more realistic. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go back to the horse mask, and I'm going to just delete this part. So I clicked on the horse mask and delete this part so you don't see that in there. This up a little bit. Okay. And we'll blend this a little bit better as we go forward here. We just are getting the basic stuff in here. I just clicked on his mask so I can make his body look like blended in here a little bit better. I'm basically refining the masks. Now, of course, it still looks like he's just plopped in there, and but now at this point, all I would probably need to do is just make him a little bit smaller. So I'm going to select both of these layers and I'm going to make them a little smaller. Because don't forget, we have the cover image name of the actual headline. So if you want to show that just to see if we're on the right spot, make it a little bit smaller so it's not too big. There we go. Something like that. Okay. So just getting the elements in there, making it look like this is basically all you need to do for this project. It's not refined yet. Let me go back to your week 4, because this is week 3, but you're going to be continuing this as we go into week 4. So let me go into that week 4 assignment just so that you can see what we will be doing as a continuation. So you're going to be doing a lot of different overlays, adjustments to make it look like now those composited images are coming together in one image and it looks more realistic. So I'm going to start using like little blend modes, overlays, color changes to make it look more realistic in your actual environment of the cover. Okay, but for now, and it states in here in week 3, we're just kind of getting all the elements together and let's see here, getting it ready to be refined. So it's at its kind of rough state right now. Let's see what we're doing. So it's a rough draft of sorts. Right here, it says the horse and human should be perfectly masked and perfectly blended together, but you don't need to have the coloring, lighting, and texture in place just yet. So that being said, back here, you know, you can play around with blending techniques. Oops, what am I doing? Wait, make it normal here. We can make a copy of this and do some blending techniques. Let's see. Get rid of this here. I'm going to blend him in a little bit better at the bottom. So I can take maybe more of the fur going down here and just kind of doing a sample of it, going back up here and blending it in. So I'm going back to the sampling the fur, Alt Option click with the clone stamp tool, and then clicking back onto the guy to select that and place that in there. And now I can just kind of paint over this. So that kind of rigid line disappears where his body is, and it looks more realistic here. Okay. And then what we'll worry about is just making him look like he fits more into this environment as we go forward. All right, so at this point, what I would do is just save this out like this, and it's okay if you can't read the copy yet. I'm gonna show you as we go forward in week 4 how to blend this a little bit better. You're gonna save this out as a JPEG, so go ahead and do save for web legacy, and just make sure it's a JPEG, 72 dots per inch. Be mindful of the size down here. We don't want it to be huge, so we're going to take the size down a little bit. We're going to do, let's try like 800. Okay. Where did this save to? Let's save to my desktop. Save somewhere. We'll do this again. House export, save as. That's 50% of that size. Oops. You don't even have to really do it this way. We can also do it save as and just save it as a JPEG here. The only thing is it might be a large JPEG, so make sure that you're choosing a lower JPEG, lower res JPEG. And then when I open up your JPEG, make sure, obviously it doesn't look that bad. This is what mine looks like. And I think, let me see what size it is here. Oh, only 420 kilobytes. So that's what you do. Just do file save as JPEG, make sure it's a low res. And then this is what you would submit for your assignment 3. So I think the key is just finding the right position of the horse with the body at first. I think that could be the challenging part. But, kind of trying to make it work for the actual background as well, eventually when we get into the week 4. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I will be meeting here tomorrow at the same time. We'll be going over some of the things that we went over today. If you want any help, come on in, and I will definitely, hopefully help you along here if you're kind of stuck, doing something for assignment 3. We'll go over your assessment 3 tomorrow as well, and kind of do a little review. So All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I kind of went over a lot of stuff today. I'm going to wrap this up today. Let me know if you have any questions, and don't forget to get started on your discussions. All right, thanks, guys.